May 13th, 2025 work session and special session is now called to order. First up, we have a proclamation for our police department for National Police Week. If everybody could come up front. Do you want to do it up here, or will you guys spread out?
I don't know about the chief behind me. That's it. I know. Neither you nor the captain should be allowed behind me. That's not a good thing. Okay. This will be easy for Eric.
Got it. Okay, first up, I consider these men and women second to none. I mean, I talked to them today. They do a wonderful job. City of Hagerstown is so grateful to have you guys, and it was never more evident than when we had the latest storm and the amount of calls you guys took and kept the city under control. It was incredible to see. So I want to thank you for that. So. Here's a proclamation. It's National Police Week, May 11th through May 17th, 2025, and Peace Officers Memorial Day, May 15th, 2025. In 1962, President John F. Kennedy proclaimed May 15th as National Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the week in which May 15th falls as National Police Week. There are more than 800,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, and more than 24,000 law enforcement officers having made the ultimate sacrifice and been killed in the line of duty, including our own Hagerstown police officer Charles Gall on October 20th, 1866, Officer Murphy Flory on June 26, 1901, Officer John Middlecoff on August 17, 1914, Chief of Police George Freidinger on February 26, 1918, Officer Linwood Newcomer on June 3, 1951, and Officer Donald Klein on December 13, 1975. It's important that citizens understand the responsibilities and sacrifices of their law enforcement agency, and members of those agencies recognize their duty to serve Hagerstown citizens by safeguarding life and property and protecting them against violence. The brave men and women of the Hagerstown Police Department increasingly provide a vital public service daily. Therefore, be it resolved that the mayor and Hagerstown City Council do hereby call upon the citizens to observe National Police Week to honor the service and sacrifice of those law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty while protecting our communities and safeguarding our democracy. Thank you, guys. You got one second. No, go ahead. I'll get there. We go through the pictures.
I just want to say thank you to the community we work for, this body and the previous elected bodies for all the support you provided to men and women that work for this department. I'm very proud to work with these guys and the work that they do every day. So again, just want to say thank you.
We thank you.
What if we roll these two chairs out?
You guys want to come up too?
Yeah. We all have our pull-ups.
Okay, I gotta go further back. Okay, here, you guys ready? Okay, and 1, 2, 3. Let me just do one for safety. Okay, and 1, 2, 3, and one more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you.
Next up, we have the presentation of prizes to the Invoice Cloud Sweepstakes winner. Can I get Beth Everhart up, please? Okay. How many winners aren't showing up today? Okay, so there are 8 missing, but we'll go ahead and announce the one that is here. Miss Catherine Martin, can you please come up? And there is your brand-new iPad that you won in this. Absolutely. Say anything, or you good?
Say that. I really appreciate this. We'll be putting it to good use at our next trade show. And that you recognize, individual people in Hagerstown for doing things in the digital world. Thank you.
So, thank you. You want to say a few words?
Want to take a picture?
You guys.
One, two, three, and one, two.
And I just wanted to mention too, certainly we thank one of our winners for coming in, but hopefully we'll have some more in the future. We're going to do another sweepstakes coming up. So we're encouraging people to opt in. And if you're not 100% familiar about what this involves, it's simply signing up to receive messages from the city. You can pretty much make the call on which ones you'd like to receive. So it's almost like an app in a way, because information comes to you, but it's information that you opt in for. So we encourage you to sign up. All you have to do is go to the website. I believe if you go to the website, it's right there on the homepage at this point.
It is.
Yep, just go ahead and scan the
Landing page.
QR code or whatever it might be. And again, there are many different options. There'll be more coming along the way, but we'll also have another sweepstakes coming up. So if you haven't signed up yet, haven't opted in yet, then we encourage you to do so.
And to piggyback with that, Invoice Cloud is the online payment portal that we utilize, but it also enables us to have a mechanism to communicate with their community. So that's why we're encouraging you to sign up. You don't have to receive them as text. You can elect to receive them as an email. I think there's even an option right now to receive messages in the form of a landline. But again, just another way that staff in the city can communicate with the customers and let our community know things that are going on and alert. Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have the discussion of Washington County proposed amendments to the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance, better known as the APFO, and the Building Excise Tax Ordinance. Mr. Stephen Bachmiller.
Good afternoon. County has 2 ordinance amendments that are pending. One are revisions to their adequate public facilities ordinance, and the other is amendments to their excise tax ordinance, which have a tendency to kind of work hand in hand. Mostly as far as a direct impact on the city. What will happen is that they are adjusting their rates on their excise tax ordinance, and they will be moving from a $1 per square foot for residential new construction to $2. All of the fees are going up in one degree or another, but that's the one of primary importance. But it's a county, it's a system-wide thing. There are certain exceptions to it. But so the fee is currently the same in the city and the county. That will not change, but the fee will be going up. The state law separates out counties and municipalities for adequate public facilities ordinances. So the amendments that they are making to the county's APFO have no direct impact on the city. Basically, we have a secondary result because they're moving some of their fee structure from the APFO over to the excise tax. But again, it's a pass-through. It's not something that the city individually benefits or incurs an obligation to. We do retain a 2% administrative fee. So actually, that'll be going up. But we wanted to get some feedback from you all on how the city should respond to this situation.
Right, so at the end of the public hearing last week, the record was being held open for 2 weeks. So if any feedback that we wish to be able to pass along would be due by next Tuesday.
And I have a couple of comments myself. As you're aware, I had spoke to the county directly this morning. I plan to return so I can finish my comments, and I'm trying to find a way to make sure that I separate my comments as it applies to this document and my seat here from the comments associated with the discussion that the Board of County Commissioners had as it applies to being a parent of the children within the city limits, and what I felt were disparaging remarks in attempting to accomplish this goal. So as it applies to the structure of this document specifically, I want to make sure that there is clarification on the staff memo at the top of page 3, which discusses the AMC and how the AMC will be removed from the APFO's current document and applied within the county excise tax document. So I think that's item 1 for me. Item 2 is the remarks that were made specific to the city of Hagerstown, who does not have an APFO and has cost the county roughly by their staff's estimate about $2 million in new school construction fund money that could have been had from development. You know, I have no issue with the county wanting to apply the excise tax consistently across the board for all housing development in Washington County. But here's the reality. It's hard to accept an entity's word that that's what will occur when you're collecting 2 different fees for like the last 15 years for the same infrastructure improvement, but haven't really put that toward any new seating capacity. So I think that's my second concern. The third is this, and that's the sort of misnomer of the purpose and intent for this being that residential construction is occurring at a pace that is beyond the county's ability to provide additional seating capacity within schools to keep up with it. And here are the 2 issues that I have with that. One, there doesn't seem to be any permanent seating capacity being added to, especially the high school level, to accommodate for the new growth, other than portables. And 2, it's hard to accept that you pinpoint the problems are residential growth within the city as it applies to the overcrowding at North High and South High, which happen to be in the city limits just barely. When you have hundreds of empty seats where students could be properly districted to the abutting schools like Clear Spring, Boonesboro, Smithsburg, and Williamsport. I live in the city. I have 5 children in the school system. My kid's school district happens to be in the Lincolnshire outside of the city, Springfield outside of the city, and Williamsport High School. So, I'm exactly one of those people that people can look at and say, well, it doesn't affect your kid. I'm in that district. In fact, I think they're probably one of the last districts that got redistricted when there was still a fortitude to properly district kids in this county. So I have that issue, and I have to tell you, if I were a developer out there, and I'm to accept sort of the doubling of cost for development because I am, being pointed at as the fault for this fee increasing, I think it'd be hard for me to digest that, knowing that at the elementary level, there are 1,000 vacant seats across the elementary school system. At the middle school level, there are 1,000 empty seats across the school system. And at the high school level, there are 1,000 empty seats in the school system. I will say lastly, as a council member that represents the folks that live within the city limits, I do have some concern that I look at the school data and see there are 17 portables at South Hagerstown High School. That is more than all the other high schools in this county combined. But you can't look at the city who makes up one third of the county student population, right? And the 2 schools in the city equate to 50% of the total high school student population. You have to make some moves at some point to efficiently operate those schools as a whole and not individually. So those are my comments.
So I would be in favor of staff putting together a memo during this comment period to address Councilman Alshire's points, as well as additional data that's publicly available about the enrollment of the students, as applicable to the conversation of overcrowding or lack thereof in certain schools, like Councilman mentioned. And also, in addition to your memo that you already provided during the agenda last week to the county.
Anyone else?
I do hope that there will be further conversations, at least with the staff level regarding this matter with the city and county, and not the formality of being on agendas, but more so coming together at the table and then obviously discussing what was considered in a public session.
So, Steve, are you good if we kind of craft some of the responses and some of the things that we're hearing so that we can provide feedback, right? Since the record is still open, and then also separately for us to reach out with the county staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can do that.
Perfect.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. All right. Next up, we were supposed to have, I'm going to go ahead and address Delegate Schindler here. Your senator counterpart is on dual highway, so he'll be here very shortly, and I'd like to have both of you come up together. So we're going to go ahead and just move one agenda item in front of you, if that's okay? All right. Let's go with the purchase of the recycling carts. Jim Bender, city engineer.
Good afternoon. So this is really about a procurement issue that we have with just the way the city's purchasing policy is set up. Back in 2011, was when the city started its recycling program. And at the start of that program, we realized we need recycling carts for people to use. And so we did a contract at that time, solicited bids to procure those carts. And the vendor that we ended up selecting at that time was Rare Pacific. And we have used Rare Pacific carts ever since the inception of the program. And the reason for doing that is we wanted to maintain consistency throughout the city. And we also, if we would switch to another vendor for the carts, then we would have to still maintain the existing Rare carts and maintain a different vendor's carts, and it just makes it more complicated. So over the years, the council has agreed to, instead of us rebidding that original contract, they've allowed us to make additional purchases as we need to for these recycling carts. But technically, it's a sole source sort of contract because we haven't been putting this out to bid again. And over time, as the prices of these carts have gone up, we are starting to get to the level where we're over the $10,000 threshold for doing sole source purchases without coming to the council. So later tonight at the special session, we've got a consent form on that agenda for the council's consideration to go ahead with a purchase of recycling carts that we need to do as soon as we can right now. And then at the regular session on the 27th, I'm going to be bringing another sort of a blanket purchase order for the council's consideration so that we get authorization during the year to go ahead and make these purchases without having to come back and get council approval each time to do it. So that's really what this memo is for. We need recycling carts now because our supply is very low. And then we want to plan for the next fiscal year at least that we can smooth things out as far as the procurement goes.
So twofold. We did a bid for recycling totes, and separately, we did a newer bid for trash totes. Same vendor supplies both. And what we would be hoping to do with these actions is, as Jim mentioned, come back in a special session to finish the purchase of items that we're needing right now for fiscal year 25. And then separately, during the regular session, doing a blanket order approval, not an order, for fiscal year 26, so that staff would have up to the amount that is in the fiscal year 26 proposed budget to continue to make those purchases, whether it would be trash versus recycling without coming back on a repetitive nature, like several months out of the year. When we do it and we handle purchasing some other items in that same manner. Any questions for Jim while he's still here?
Very good. Well, I tell you what, Jim, since he's not here yet, why don't you go ahead and let's take care of your other item.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
These are separate from the totes you guys bought with the ARPA funds, correct?
Well, what we used the ARPA funds for were for trash
Trash.
carts for the citywide rollout.
Initially.
But I think what Michelle's saying is because it's the same vendor for both the trash carts and the recycling carts, Rare Pacific, this blanket motion or order that we're going to do is going to be for both. So
Because you
that
said
we
it's
can-
sole source procurement, which they usually they're ones that can provide what they can provide, so solely based on that, so. Thanks.
Anybody else on that subject? Okay. While you're here, Jim, let's go ahead and do the Meredith Park fireworks exemption for July 4th, 2025.
So back in March, came to council and presented the list of proposed firework event dates at Meredith Park. And there were 11 that were proposed. One of those dates was July 4th, Friday, July 4th. And there were concerns raised that there wasn't going to be adequate personnel from the fire marshal's office to cover the city's firework event, the Meredith Park event, and also patrol the city for illegal fireworks that night. So the council approved the other fireworks dates for the flying boxcars at that time, but we pulled out the July 4th event, waiting to see if we could get some additional information from the fire marshal's office. And it turns out that they now have enough staff that they feel that they can accomplish all three of those things. Do the Fairgrounds Park fireworks show, the Meritus Park show, and patrol the city that night. So coming back now, if the council's in agreement to see if you want to exempt the Flying Boxcars July 4th fireworks event from the city's noise ordinance.
Anyone?
That's impressive to be able to accommodate. That's a lot. A lot of events.
And Chief Tobacco is here to, if you have any specific questions on how they managed to do that. But
Yeah, I am curious, Chief.
You want to come up,
because-
Chief?
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, so how are you gonna accommodate? How's the team gonna accommodate so many events in one night?
So the Office of the State Fire Marshal regulates the personnel who have to be there, have to have certain training and certifications. Once the fireworks are loaded at a site, a fire marshal who is certified has to remain at that site where the fireworks are loaded. It's the desire of the city to also provide patrols to the neighborhoods for fireworks in the neighborhoods and law enforcement type coverage. And so the question was, did we have enough personnel who were trained and certified, approved by the state to cover both Fairgrounds Park at Meritus, as well as providing adequate coverage patrol? We did some internal training. Our fire marshal has worked with the state fire marshal's office, and we feel comfortable that we have enough personnel who meet the criteria to cover all those events on staff for July 4th.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that said, I think I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we'll have Margie Jo and Rachel Paul give us the Middle Neighborhoods Emergency Repair Grant Program, please. I know we're jumping around here a little bit, but
Thank you. So, we'd like to present the guidelines and application for the Middle Neighborhoods Emergency Repair Grant Program, which is funded by $75,000 in state community legacy monies. This program will operate very similarly to our, let me catch my breath for a second. This will operate very similarly to our CDBG Emergency Repair Grant Program, but this will allow a higher income threshold for eligibility. Currently, HUD guidelines allow a household to make up to 80% of area median income, or AMI, to qualify for programs. But this program will allow up to 120% of AMI to qualify. And you may have heard these families referred to as ALICE families, ALICE being asset limited, income constrained, and employed. They work full-time and they manage basic needs, but a single unexpected high dollar expense can push them into severe financial hardship. But they still make too much money to qualify for most assistance programs. So we're looking to ease that burden with this program. Middle Neighborhoods Grant will pay 75% of the cost of repairs, so homeowners will be responsible for only 25% of the expense. And we're hoping to assist at least 5 to 7 families with this program. So if this all meets with your approval, our next step will be a vote at the May 27th regular session, after which we'll publish the program and start taking applications.
And just a note for those that are new with the state community legacy monies and funding that the city has received, this would be our new one of the new fundings that we received and are utilizing, and it does not require the city to do any local matches on that. So again, it's entirely 75,000 we're able to award and give out, hopefully to a population that, you know, needs the assistance and the help, but is oftentimes falls through the cracks, if you will.
So we were granted the money.
Yes, yeah,
Or we applied for 75? Okay,
I think we applied for 150, but we were granted 75.
better than zero. I'll take it. That's good. Congratulations.
I have a question. So you said it works very similar to the emergency home repair grant. And I know we talked about that before, because my main, excuse me, my main concern was the length of time it takes to, the steps that it takes to get the repairs done. Will that kind of work? Is that going to be similar to that too?
It will be, yes, because we'll still do like the same kind of income documentation. We're still requesting that the homeowner gets 3 estimates. We'll have our community liaison, Sue Kyler, she'll go in and do the scope of work so that the homeowner has the same information to hand out to all their contractors that do the estimates. So it is a process, but just to, you know, keep everything like very nice and even and consistent across the board.
Because I know it took like 6 months to finish.
I'm not sure which project that was, but
When we discussed the emergency homeowners repair, I just thought that was a little long. Just for example, if somebody's applying, like especially a roof.
we
you
do have
definitely
some
don't
that
want-
work a lot quicker. I mean, there are a lot of factors that play in, some variables. Sometimes it depends on the homeowner themselves, sometimes it depends on the contractor. We try to make it not depend on us to drag anything out, but.
Okay. All right.
Just a quick question, sorry.
Yes,
So is this added on to, is this like an additional program added on to the emergency home
It's
grant program? Or is it
actually
replacing it?
completely, no, it's
Okay.
completely separate. The CDBG, that's funded through our federal CDBG dollars, and
Yes.
this is state funding, a separate program. It'll just work much the same way.
Okay.
Just allow that higher income threshold.
And then I guess second question, this is mostly for the viewers, but if anyone experienced any emergency repair based on what happened with the storm, right? The unexpected storm, this would be something that they would qualify, that would be,
They could, yeah,
Okay.
it would have to be reviewed.
Okay.
But yes, definitely.
And so as part of the budget later this evening, depending on where the conversation and discussion goes, we have planned to cover CDBG, which is our federal entitlement and mostly it's funded by HUD, right? Most of our money's there. And again, it is federally funded and has way more restrictions and things that we have to adhere to, things that we have to make sure we have all the appropriate documentation. Because even though we're granting and giving that money out, there are still federal restrictions on how we do it and the things we have to have in advance. But then separately, in our other fund, economic redevelopment, we will have this grant shown as a pass-through, where we're showing the great money's coming in and then expenses going out.
no, I think this is great. I've had several people reach out about, like roof, for example, and they didn't meet the income threshold.
Right.
So this is another tool that we can use to help larger demographics, so I appreciate that.
And this kind of, it came along kind of nicely. So we've been looking for an opportunity like this just because the HUD restrictions or the HUD income guidelines are pretty strict. And for somebody to be, to not meet that threshold does not mean they're making a lot of money. So.
Right, and with those income guidelines, it's in place that we currently adhere to in our CDBG and the emergency repair grant program that we still have funded in our budget, right? It is not the city, it's not the city defining the income guidelines. It is, again, the federal guidelines being restricted and the federal guidelines that we must adhere to. So again, a little bit, sometimes federal grants, again, just like we said when we first received ARPA, we received all this money, and it can be a blessing and a curse. Sometimes it can be a blessing and a curse, right? It's great to have the money and it's great to be able to help and assist, but sometimes the extra documentation that you have to go slows down the process, and we do realize that, unfortunately. You have more?
Yeah, so I know you said with the other one, the emergency home repair federal, right?
Yes.
So this one's state, so do we have a little more flexibility
We do.
with that one? It's not so much restricted.
It's from a, I guess, a documentation and a guideline standpoint, that you do have a little bit more leniency. That's why we're able to set the income guidelines
And
capital.
so we provide a list of contractors for,
We have a list available if a homeowner needs it, but, or they're free to reach out on their own to
but they
whomever.
have to have 3 quotes.
Yes. And I would think, well, especially in this case, since they are paying, they will cover like 25% of the expense, I would guess that they would also be looking for the most reasonable contractor too.
This is great news. Putting Stitch right to work. Right to work, yeah. Here's some more
We're
for you.
excited.
And so the next steps, do you have to bring this back for a vote during a regular session at the end of the month?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Marty.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, they have one more.
They might-
They have one more.
What's that?
They have one
another
more.
one that you want to-
No, I know, but we have our senator here.
Oh, gotcha.
Next up is our legislative update with Delegate Matthew Schindler, and I think, yep, Senator Corn's walking in on cue.
Oh, there's an elevator.
Huh?
Told you, an elevator. Good timing.
Hello, welcome back.
Hello.
Thank you. It's a good seat you have there.
Best seat.
That's my seat. So, good.
Okay, well, good evening. It's nice to be back at the table, at the other side of the table now, so good to see everybody. So this is kind of a recap. I'm actually more interested in any questions that you have. I suspect a lot of this is going to be rehashed for you guys, so stop me at any time. I'm going to try to just give a brief overview of how the session seemed to go from my end, and more interested in your feedback, of course. And it's going to be vital, anything that are priorities for the city to bring for next session. So that's my big concern for this evening. But of course, you guys know it was a tough year. The state started off the session in a $3 billion deficit. I came in a day before the session, so it was a bit of a learning curve for me, and not a lot of time to ramp up as far as bills and things of that nature. I did have 2 city priority bills that I presented. One passed through the House, the other did not pass through the House or the Senate. And the one that passed through the House was the body cameras for municipal code enforcement officers. That had some momentum behind it. I suspect if that's something you're interested in pursuing again next year, that we might be able to move that. The other bill was dealing with municipal annexation. It was trying to be rid of the express approval piece whenever the city would like to annex properties that are part of the county. That unfortunately was viewed, I believe, more of a local squabble. So if we decide to pursue that again next session, I would say that one, we would definitely want to get a hold of MML, get other municipalities that are in a similar situation to come and testify as well. That way it doesn't seem as just a local issue for us. So those are the two local city of Hagerstown bills that I was able to present. As far as the budget goes, although it was tough, you had to cut or raise $3 billion. I think we made out very well locally. And I'm sure Senator Quarterman will speak to this as well. But we were able to bring home a good deal of funding to the city of Hagerstown, to our district. Of course, we were able to get phase 2 of I-81 put back in the budget. So that's a very large, around $63 million investment. The Hagerstown Visitor Center, we were able to get about $540,000 for that. The public safety feasibility study for the city, we were able to get $250,000 for that. As well as a few other, we were able to get Western Enterprises, about $317,000 in funding to do revamp on their HVAC and some safety issues that they need with that facility. As well as the Boys and Girls Club, an additional $200,000 to close the gap as they're getting ready to open their new facility. And Federal Little League had applied for an LBI for $125,000. We were able to get that funding put through for them as well. As far as legislation, a few notable things, I think, for the folks at this table. There were some interesting housing-related bills that came through, one of which is that one that I co-sponsored, that 24-hour notice must be given for a landlord to enter premises. If you're a tenant, they have to give 24 hours notice before they can come in. There are a few other, I would view wins this session, one of which deals with a large number of federal employees who are residents of the state. We were able to provide catastrophic leave funding, change some verbiage there so that that could be used for mass layoffs of our residents that were federal employees. We also had some really good progress as far as medical bills. So prescription drug affordability, we were able to expand the Prescription Drug Affordability Board, which sets upper limits to what the state will pay on state insurance, so that we can try to cap the cost of some of these prescription drugs. There were also some other, the blueprint for Maryland, the school blueprint was fully funded this year, which I'm very happy to say that we made a priority. So I'll stop there. I could talk all day about all the things that happened. I'll wait and get your feedback and of course give the senator a chance to speak and not.
Yeah, I'm
take-
assuming the homeless bill of rights didn't get passed, one where they can set up camping ordinances and public parks and sidewalks and things like that.
Correct, no.
Thank God. So, and I wrote on behalf of the city, which I think that would hurt us immensely here.
And I will say, I appreciate everybody at this table for your advocacy, the council, the city staff, the mayor, city administrator, all very visible in Annapolis, and that really helps us. The more visible we are, the more we're on the map, the more we get, our names in people's mind for funding and for consideration on bills, and they know our opinion and our stance on where the city of Hagerstown stands. So, thank
I
you.
was glad to see the public safety feasibility study in there because I was down in Annapolis testifying with that with the Greater Hagerstown Committee, and I'm glad to see that was in.
Yes, sir, and I appreciate your advocacy.
Absolutely.
In 81, we all know it's been a disaster with all the 18-wheelers and all the traffic accidents and everything else there. And it's only 12 miles to Hawaii, and it just seems like it's ridiculous. We have to drag our feet every year for this, but I know you guys have been fighting this before I've gotten elected, so it's been a
Hopefully,
constant issue.
I will stay cautiously optimistic till a shovel hits the ground, but hopefully we can
Yeah.
save some lives there. So,
Yeah, and I'll pick up right there on that part of 81 of, we want to see a shovel in the ground, because as we all know, that funding was there previously, and then it was removed, and then it was put back, and it's been a dance, so to speak, over the years. We, as a delegate, and I won't speak for him, but I think we're in the same position. We'll continue to advocate for that, as well as the rest of the delegation going forward. In regards to the entire legislative session, I kind of lead it off a little bit what Delegate Schindler said. It was a challenging one. I always say they're unique. Each one, and you probably heard me say this before, are unique in and of themselves. They all present different challenges. They all present different, topics, so to speak, whether it's, the budget was obviously the dominant conversation this year. There's been, law enforcement issues in years past. There's been, any variety of different issues. So each and every one of them's unique to themselves. Again, the budget being the most challenging one, as Delegate Schindler said, it was a $3 billion budget deficit. We passed what we hope is a balanced budget. The Maryland Constitution is the one thing we have to do each and every year is pass a balanced budget. Being there's a lot of uncertainty at the federal government right now, we're not certain if that will be balanced per se as things move forward. There's talks that we may go back in the fall. That is yet to be seen, and that all depend on. So the Maryland budget is about $60-some billion. About half of it's federal pass-through money, so it's kind of hard to have a quote-unquote balanced budget when you don't know what the other half is going to look like. So We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but as far as the legislation itself, the legislation session itself, they generally did a great job articulating on some of the wins, especially from a capital aspect, that he and I were both able to work collaboratively together on. You know, I think it's obviously everyone here knows this. He and I both sat in these same seats at one time. And, you know, we always have always and will always advocate for the city of Hagerstown. Obviously, we both live in the city of Hagerstown. And I've obviously been in the same position, as I said, as many of you are in today. And we're here to help continue those conversations, foster that collaborative spirit as we move forward. In regards to specific legislation, you know, a handful of things that our office handled. I know one that was of interest to not just this body, but previous administrations. Our office, when I say we, has always looked into reentry and imminent release and how that's handled with our correctional facilities south of town. And so we were able to finally pass some legislation this year, just basically to provide some data. Because at the end of the day, when folks are being reentered into society, we want them to be successful. And in order for them to be successful, we need to know and have the proper resources in place, the proper support systems, and everything of that nature. And the department for the last several years has not been as forthcoming to really advise the community of the number of individuals that are being released back into our community. And so we're hopeful with that information, we'll be able to utilize that in a productive manner to provide the proper support systems and the proper reentry programs so that individuals can, you know, go back to being, you know, contributing members of society. We want people to be rehabilitated. We want people to be reintegrated back to society. But if we don't know what we're working with, that's a huge challenge, I think, for our community, because there's only a certain amount of a threshold, so to speak, that we're able to kind of handle. When we don't know, we're in the dark, so to speak, of even what we're looking with or working with, so to speak, that can be a challenge. So we actually finally passed something this year in regards to that. You know, a handful of other local things we had to deal with was to add the Meredith School of Osteopathic Medicine, which I know everyone is excited about, which will be the third medical school in the state of Maryland to allow their students to be eligible for scholarship programs, much like the other graduate programs that already exist in the state. The Western Maryland Economic Investment Fund, more commonly known as the George Board, which provides financing and grant opportunities to the 3 western counties, Washington, Allegheny, and Garrett County. We were able to get that passed again. It does not have a mandatory appropriation as it did in the past. However, the governor has pledged his commitment to continue to fund that for as long as he is in office. And so we look forward to that still being a positive source of grant opportunities for our community. Again, Delegate Schinner touched on a lot of the local and capital opportunities, so I won't rehash all of those. Obviously, I think I know a conversation that is need to be had, and probably is a topic of conversation everyone here wants to talk about, is in regards to the tax exemption bill that was put forward in regards to the ballpark. And so I'm happy to have a conversation about that, answer any questions you may have. I'll just start off on basically some background on that. As I know, we have some new folks at the table. We have some folks that have obviously been around for a while throughout those conversations, and how this where we started and how we got to where we are now. And so I guess I would start out with that is, you know, when the bill was passed for the ballpark, I guess about 4 years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago, as many as you know, the ballpark was set up as to be an ownership through Chief, through our industrial foundation. And there are multiple reasons behind that. Many of those we don't need to go down that road right now. But basically the common agreement was so the city wouldn't have ownership of it, the county wouldn't have ownership with it, that Chief would be the ownership entity of the ballpark. Very unique in our state, the state of Maryland. That has never been done anywhere else in the state of Maryland. So it's a very unique thing that was done here, something we should be proud of. But anytime you do something new and innovative, there are things along the way that need to be addressed. And so part of that uniqueness is in regards to property tax. And so when the ballpark was set up originally 4 years ago, we were advised by SDAT that the park needed to be within, you know, under a nonprofit. So Chief set up a 501c3 nonprofit. That is the entity that controls the ballpark. That is the ownership group. The Boxcars are not the owners of the facility. They are the leasee, I guess. They lease the ballpark. So Chief, under a 501c3, is the entity that technically owns the ballpark. And under that 501c3, they were to be provided tax exempt status. The ballpark is a community amenity. It's used by the community for a variety of different things. The boxcars are just one entity that obviously uses, they're probably the one that uses the most people see it, is they're the majority tenant, so to speak. But the park itself is an amenity for the community. And when that was set up under that 501c3, that was to provide the tax exemption status. Every other ballpark that's in the state of Maryland, whether it's Frederick, whether it's Delmarva, whether it's Bowie, whether it's, trying to think the other ones there, Aberdeen, they are all tax exempt. The reason being is because they're all owned by either local, county, or state government, which provides them that tax exemption. And so again, we provided a unique opportunity here in Hagerstown with having Chief being that basically they are just I won't say a shell per se, but they're just a holding entity that holds the ballpark as that community asset. If you were to ask Chief or to look at Chief's books as far as what their finances look like, there's one item. They get rent from the boxcars, and that rent goes right into a capital investment fund for future improvements at the ballpark. They generate no profit, they make no money. As a matter of fact, they lose money. They've lost money over the last 2 years by owning that facility. And also at the end of the day, they're in charge of the maintenance of the facility going forward. It was brought to our attention that SSTAT had challenged the tax exemption status about it. My understanding is that may have come from this building. I don't know who from exactly, but that doesn't matter. The fact is that exemption status was challenged. And so all the bill that we put forward was basically a clarification to SSTAT of what the facility always was supposed to be. It was always supposed to be tax exempt. The only thing is this facility is to be treated like every other facility in the state of Maryland that houses these same opportunities and used by the same community members. In fact, the uniqueness of the ballpark, which has Chief as the Industrial Foundation is kind of the holding company, is mirrored after what happened in York, Pennsylvania. And many years ago, probably 5 years ago, myself, Ronnie Tissue, Scott Nicewarner, Blackie Bowen, Frank Bolton, who's the president of the Atlantic League, we all visited York to talk to them. How did they do this? How was their plan put together? And that's where we came up with the idea about the Industrial Foundation being the entity that held control of the facility. So we didn't have the city involved in it, didn't have the county involved in it, kind of create peace amongst, everyone here, so to speak. And that's where we came up with the concept about the Industrial Foundation. And the only reason I bring that up is because if you go and talk to the folks in York, Pennsylvania and their Industrial Foundation, you will find out that they are tax exempt as well. Because nobody pays property taxes on a minor league baseball team, because it is that the amount of taxes, if you were trying to apply to that, would be many times over what the rent or the lease is even to begin with. And the economics would never even work for anybody. And again, I bring that up because what this unique situation that we did here in Maryland, that's never been done anywhere else, mirrors something that already has happened in Pennsylvania. And again, they are tax exempt as well. So I'm not sure, quite frankly, of where or how it became thought that there would be taxes that were going to be derived from this this entity. But I would just say that was a false narrative that never should have been put out there. And the fact that it's continued to be explored is a little bit concerning. But again, I'm here to answer and happy to answer any questions. That's just kind of the background, though, of how the ballpark evolved and where we got now. Additionally, I would add that there is precedence here in the city of Hagerstown, my understanding, that many years ago before, well, maybe not all of us, but that there was at the fairgrounds that Chief stepped in, created a 501c3, held some property at the fairgrounds for a while. And again, that was tax exempt. There was no challenge for taxes on that, even though Chief was under a 501c3 with property in the city. It was not subject to property tax. And I only bring that up because that is an example where that had been done here already locally within this body, within this jurisdiction. At the same time, the bigger thing is the facility we have, which is this great facility that we're all very excited about and the community has embraced. This bill technically really was just a cleanup of what was already the expectation, what already was always to be known from the very beginning. If I had to do it all over again, we put the bill forward 4 years ago, we would have just had the language in there, so there was no question about it. What we were advising at the time was set the ballpark up under a 501c3 status. You're fine, there's no issue. Again, that was challenged, and here we are today, and we're looking to move forward. But that is kind of the background of how things started to kind of where we're at now. So I know that that's been a topic of conversation around this table, and so wanted to make sure that I took the opportunity at least to address that. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody may have. And outside of that, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I apologize for being late. I was actually in Annapolis today with a bill signing today for a constituent in the Boonesboro area who came down, and there was a little bit of traffic coming back to the ring, so apologize for the tardiness. But thank you again for having us. And as Delegate Shinner said there earlier, obviously we're here to answer any questions you may have today. Also looking to further collaborate with you guys throughout the summer and in the interim, so that when we go back to Annapolis, if there are legislative items that the city is focused on or wants to have addressed, that we make ourselves available to not just be here today, but to be here in the future to help with that collaboration and whatever we can do to help the city move forward.
Well, first off, I just want to commend both of you for coming and taking the time out to speak with us today. I think we need to see more of this. I think the city needs to see more of this, and not just coming from you two, but just a collaboration effort. You mentioned a lot about the fundings that you guys advocated for and actually pulled through with the visitor center, the fee study, the Little League, 81 funding. This is all great. And I would love for this to continue and that energy to continue as far as advocating for more housing developments and school seatings as well. So that's just my little 2 cents that I had to say for both of you.
And I appreciate that, Councilmember. I just want to add real quick, I have been a strong advocate when you talk about with schools and school seating. I know I've had a couple conversations with the school board and the county commissioners. Obviously, that's more of a conversation with the two of them. And I don't want to speak for the delegate here, but I agree with you. And we need to do more on that side. When you look at the capital programming for the school system, and there's no additional schools that are planned in our county for the next 10 years outside the one they're going to build, that's a problem. And so I'm hopeful that the commissioners and the Board of Ed can come together to rectify that, because you need both of them. Obviously, we're going to increase housing and have housing opportunities. We need to have schools can handle that as well. So I appreciate that. Look forward to working with you on that.
Thank you.
I had a question. Thank you both for being here as well. So you mentioned several of the other ball fields that are tax exempt, but if I remember, you said that they were either owned by a city or a county.
Correct.
So, and if I'm just to be clear, ours isn't owned by the city or county.
That's correct.
So that's kind of like my question. They're tax exempt because they're owned by one or the other. So if you could just kind of clarify that.
Yeah, so again, that was kind of the understanding as we went into this, 4 or 5 years ago. Again, not to rehash all those conversations, but just to be, kind of frank and blunt, the city didn't want to own the ballpark. The county didn't want to own the ballpark. The county has no expectation of obtaining tax revenue from the ballpark. When all this kind of was being conversated here a number of weeks ago while we were in legislative session, when SDAT brought this, forward to Chief, we spoke with the county. They had no expectation of getting tax revenue because they were under the same, understanding that I thought everybody was when we went into this 4 or 5 years ago, that Chief is just the entity that holds the ballpark. They're not generating a profit. There's no money to be made. The fact that Chief is the owner doesn't change the fact of where would that 800,000, whatever the number may be, come from, right? So if the city owned the ballpark, the county wouldn't be getting taxes, right? If the county owned the ballpark, the city wouldn't be getting taxes. If the state owned the ballpark, the city wouldn't be getting taxes. So because we have this third-party entity that owns it, that doesn't generate a profit, that's a 501c3, that all they are is basically a shell per se to hold it, and they're responsible for maintaining it going forward, where's the money coming from? There is no money. There never was any money. There's nothing. I guess what I'm trying to address is this narrative that's been put out there. The city is losing money on this. There was no money ever to be gained. So this narrative that the city is losing money is just inaccurate. There was no money to ever be gained. There was no property tax that ever was to be discussed. And again, I don't know where that came from, so I can't speak to the parties that felt that for whatever reason. But that was never the understanding because none of those entities have that. Again, the ballpark in Pennsylvania that we modeled this after is owned by an industrial foundation and they're tax exempt. So the way I guess I would say back to your thing that you're asking about, because the city and the county, I would point to that. I was like, yes, what was modeled about, they're tax exempt also. And that was always the understanding. That's why they were set up as a 501c3 to have that tax exemption status. And the reason we had to put the legislation forward was to provide that clarification to SDAT to make it crystal clear that was the intent of what this facility is to be.
So when that was addressed with SDAT, what was their response from them?
So when you say that was addressed, what do you mean by that?
I'm thinking you're saying SDAT came. to
SDAT
us,
said it
asked-
basically, and I apologize, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
SDAT basically sent basically a tax bill, basically the chief, saying although you are a nonprofit 501c3, there were certain criteria that they weren't certain if it would actually fall under that. And so that was like, well, this is not what we were told 2 or 3 years ago. And here's where we're like, well, it was kind of one of those he said, she said moments where maybe not the full information. I can't speak to that exactly because, that was 4 or 5 years ago and different people that were there then are not there now and things of that nature. And said, all right, well, how do we rectify this? And that's how we rectify it, is with the legislation to make it clear. Because again, it all goes back to Councilmember, there's no other facility like this in the state of Maryland. And as we go along there, now, we've had another thing that came over there, which has nothing to do with this body per se, but there's a tort liability bill that I've pursued a couple of times. Also, we're still trying to provide tort liability protection to the ballpark. Because again, it's a public amenity, it's used by the public, but it's not owned by the public. Ironically, the public's paying for it because the debt service is being paid by the state of Maryland. So it's, yes, does the state own it? No, the state's paying for it. Chief owns it, but they don't make any money off of it. So it's that uniqueness of what it is, which is why we had to provide that clarification. And again, it goes back to, like I said, what was exactly modeled after is the industrial foundation who houses the facility in North Pennsylvania provides that tax exempt status also the state of Pennsylvania does to them.
So if the, and I understand what you were saying. And that's the understanding of the state and those private parties that engaged in this partnership. Clearly wasn't the understanding of the city through those deliberations. But if you look at the Senate Bill 596 that was put in to make it crystal clear, the original iterations of that bill were clearly a different animal. They had different parameters. So if the impetus that you're saying that the bill put forward was to accomplish the deliberateness of that crystal clarity for that one specific entity, I guess I'm struggling to understand why the bill then evolved from something entirely differently. Because if I'm a private investor and I come into your local jurisdiction and I read this bill and it says, look, if you invest a minimum of $20 million into the community, you can go to that local governmental jurisdiction and you can engage them in a dialogue to negotiate a pilot, payment in lieu of taxes, where you sort of agree, look, the tax bill is going to be really big, and we really don't demand that level of service. Maybe it's not 375, which is what the number it is. Maybe it's really 125,000, and you negotiate that. That seemed to be what the impetus of that bill was, and to be applied in some consistent manner of eligibility to all of those entities that could equitably engage in that dialogue. And it went from that, and so I'm sitting there as a private business, and I look and say, okay, here's what it means. I may have this opportunity to, it doesn't mean that, it means something entirely different. And it only applies to the opportunity of that single entity. I'm just trying to figure out if that was the purpose, why didn't you just write it that way from the outset?
Good question, and got a very easy answer for you. You're right, the two have nothing to do with each other. And I think Doug can back me up on this. That's why the bills they are the way they are. So when this was brought to our attention, it was well past the bill submission deadline. We couldn't put a new bill in. And so we needed a vehicle, in essence, to be able to address this. ESTAT, when this was brought up, that bill that you're referencing is a tax bill. A tax credit bill has to do with Washington County. It has nothing to do with the ballpark. But it's the same subject matter in tax and code and tax law, so to speak. So when you put legislation forward, it's got to be within the same subject. So we needed basically, in essence, a vehicle to put this legislation onto for it to go through the legislative process. That being said, there was a robust discussion, I think you would agree, within the delegation of wanting to keep those separate. So that's why you'll see, if you look at those bills, they came in together. It was Senate Bill 596. I forget the House bill number. But basically, they went in as the exact same bill. And all they had to do with was a tax credit with the county. It was the county's bill they put forward. What happened at the end is they were bifurcated, so to speak. So the House bill that went through solely has to do with the tax credit. I think you're talking about those tax credits you saw. That still happened in the House bill version. The Senate bill version only has to deal with the ballpark. So we took it and split it into two separate pieces of legislation. So quite to your point, that they were distinct and clear to themselves. The bill, Senate Bill 596, the bill that was introduced is entirely struck. Every single thing is struck. And the only thing in there is the new language specific to the ballpark. Because again, that piece of legislation was essentially used, or I shouldn't say essentially, it was the vehicle for the legislation because it was well after, you guys all know, we're there for 90 days. When we get to Annapolis, there's 1 week that we have to basically have bills put in that are guaranteed a hearing, they're guaranteed to go through the legislative process. If it doesn't happen that first week, you got to come back next year. And that's just the way it is. This was brought up about halfway through the session. The only way to do it was to basically create an amendment to an already existing piece of legislation, which is where that tax credit bill came into play because we had a bill that had to do with Washington County that was in the tax code, and that was what we were able to use to put that legislation in. But again, the bills then were separated to be completely separate, and that's why that helps clarify what you saw. They have nothing to do with each other. You're right. The property tax exemption for the ballpark has absolutely zero to do with the tax credit part that was originally introduced, and that's why that was separate and went through the House version. And I think you could probably attest to that is why everyone wanted to keep them separate.
Yeah, so the House bill version of that, it was originally a Washington County delegation bill, House side, Senate side. They were cross-filed. HB 750 did pass,
Yep.
Which was the original
In its
intent.
original form, yep.
Now, Senate Bill
596.
597, or 596, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That one, when it came through, changed. We did make an additional amendment, and I will take some onus on this because my understanding of sort of the amendment, if you look at the amendments on the bill as published online, there's an amendment in there with that payment in lieu of taxes clause on the Senate bill. And my understanding of that was that would say, okay, they can be exempt, say the county isn't expecting any taxes. The county can choose to absolve them of payment of taxes. If the city was expecting taxes, then they could accept a lesser, I'm so sorry, I forget who mentioned that, but they could accept a lesser agreement amount than whatever the full amount was, if you choose to do so, you being the city. But the verbiage of it is that right now, that bill exempts the ballpark unless they choose to enter in a payment in lieu of taxes, as opposed to it's a payment in lieu of taxes if the agreement can be met. So the only thing I could offer, it's passed through at this point, but what I could offer to you guys would be, right now that's on the books, and certainly I think a conversation should be had between the city and chief. I think so. To see, because certainly city resources are being used, I'm sure in excess of what a normal property owner would get, being the way the ballpark is. I don't want to see the ballpark go out of business. I mean, we all love having the amenity here either. But if in a, what's the word I'm looking for? If a equitable agreement can't be met, I'm certainly willing to go back and try to amend that from a may to a shall. I think that's the verbiage piece that's different in what essentially precludes them completely from taxes with the ability to enter an agreement versus the taxes would be owed unless an agreement was reached. So I would say a conversation would be worth having, and if that's not, I mean, nothing we could do at this point if that's not come out to the city's ability to provide the services needed. But if that comes to the point, that would be my suggestion to take it a step further if need be. I would certainly be willing to try and revisit that if that's the will of the body.
I think that's a great suggestion. I mean, the bill has already passed. We just have to look at the facts. We have a parking deck that we have a bond that we owe debt to. We have a great team of police officers and firefighters that we gladly accommodate to the baseball stadium, and that could be used elsewhere. So, little things like that, I think you're right. If we can just come to some sort of agreement with Chief to see what they're willing to do, what they're able to do as far as with the city, and then just kind of go forward from there.
Yeah, I would urge that conversation because that is part of the bill currently, is that there can still be a payment in lieu of taxes agreement worked out as the bill is currently written.
Chief, I just want to understand. So ticket sales, food, anything that's brought in, of course, there's employees there, so you pay them. So anything additional goes to Chief, and then Chief does the
Chief
repair.
owns the facility. All the employees you're talking about, ticket sales, all that is the boxcars, the Hagerstown boxcars. They are,
Right,
they
but you
lease,
said-
they lease the facility. Think of it
You
as
said
a
what
landlord-
Chief gets,
I'm sorry?
you don't, technically, what Chief gets, they don't really get it. All that goes back into any repair.
Chief collects a rent. I'm not privy to what their rent is
Okay.
that they get from the boxcars. The boxcars pay them a rent, just like any other team.
Okay,
Frederick
okay.
pays the city of Frederick, Bowie pays the Maryland National Parks Department, whoever owns that facility. They pay them rent, whatever it is, to say it's $1. They pay it, which is not accurate, so I shouldn't say it for the people, but they pay a substantial amount of money. That money that Chief accepts goes directly into a capital investment fund that is utilized for improvements to the facility in the future.
That's
if and
what I
so
just
when they're
want to
needed.
understand. So
Yeah.
whatever it is collected,
Yeah, whatever
goes
the
back
rent is
into
collected.
repairs or whatever the ball field needs.
Right, because Chief is ultimately responsible then for the upkeep of the facility, any improvements that need to be made. And so, and I hear the council member when there's concerns about, the police presence there, that's an investment that the city pays for. Obviously, the parking deck and things of that nature. I go back to the same thing of, if all this would have been, 4 years ago, and we said, all right, you know what? Washington County is going to own the facility. We still have the same ballpark downtown, you still have the same parking deck, you still have the same police officers in there. None of us would be having this conversation because it would be cut and dry, the county owns the facility. Or if the state owned it or something like that. So I do agree with the delegate here. I think the first step in anything, just like we're having today, is have a conversation. So I'd encourage you to have a conversation with Chief, if that's something you want to do. But let's also not lose sight on what the city of Hagerstown has gained here. Because I think what I hear a lot is the city's losing on this for some reason, again, which I think is a false narrative that's been put out there, which is unfortunate. Have the assessments come out yet? Most recent assessments around the ballpark from SDAT?
They don't get
That's what's
reassessed
coming out.
until next
Right.
year.
You want to see what you're getting? Wait till you see those assessments come out. I think you go talk to your economic development office and ask about, well, I don't think you have to go see it. You guys see it. You guys go to all the ribbon other things of all the investment and the growth that's being done around the facility. There's obviously admissions amusement tax that you guys are gaining off of that now that you didn't have before, which is probably quite a lot more than, I'm sure it's more than when the Suns were here. And if it's not, I see that, and I talked to the city administrator
Not
about
sure
that.
about that.
Well, that's probably a conversation you have also, because there's a lot more people at that facility than there ever were at Municipal Stadium. And so that's something that definitely should be looked into, and I would encourage you to do that. But there is a lot to be gained, not to mention the 175,000 people who came to downtown Hagerstown last year, that wouldn't have done that. So, I hear you, council member, as far as, I don't think everything can be looked in a vacuum, so to speak, as far as, yes, our police services at the ballpark, for sure. And is there a cost to that? Absolutely. But there's a lot that the city of Hagerstown is gaining out of this, that again, there's not one dime coming out of your budget, other than those police services you talked about, that are going towards the debt service of the ballpark. There's the parking deck, which is appreciative, but let's be honest, that was, in the capital improvement plan for many, many years before the ballpark was even there, and will probably be done at some point in time, just like another deck in the future will be done. And at the same time, there's a lot of positive gains that are coming from this. Again, there's no debt service on it from the city of Hagerstown, and there's no upkeep that has to be done. Get any other community, any place, and I'm not saying that the city is not appreciative of it, because I know they are. But again, when you continue to hear this, oh, well, the city's losing on this, and now they're not paying this, and that's not right. Well, that's never what this was envisioned as. This was envisioned as a community entity to be what it is, all the wonderful things we see, but it was never to pay property taxes, because no ballpark in the state of Maryland pays property taxes, because no ball team would ever be able to play there, because the economics just don't work. If you try to sell the boxcars and they got to pay $800,000, there would be no boxcars. That'd be multiple times what their rent is, whatever it is, and it would never even happen. And so, again, I'm not sure how we got to this point that we got there, where there's this expectation of property taxes that were gonna come to the city. But that was, when I found out about this in the middle of session, I was floored. And I called the city administrator and asked him straight up and said, Scott, was there an expectation that the city was gonna get property taxes? And he said, yes. I said, I don't know where that came from, because that was never the agreement or understanding that I was ever privy of, or a conversation I was in. In fact, when we went to York, Pennsylvania and had that conversation, it was talked about that they had an industrial foundation, to kind of, because the politics are what they are, to get the city and the county out of it, and just looking to have this facility treated, again, in an equitable fashion, just like every other facility is treated, not only in the state of Maryland, but as we see in our neighboring state that this was modeled after. So.
I got two.
Go for it.
I'll jump off the stadium subject, but
Oh, sure.
Delegate Schindler, can you give us the crux of that pharmaceutical bill again?
Surely. Yeah, so what that particular bill is it's a prescription drug affordability board, which exists currently. But the scope of the drugs that they are currently able to look at is very limited. What that bill did is it's HB 424, if you guys want to read into the real nitty gritty of it. But essentially it expands the ability of what they can, what that board can choose to look at. So which drugs they can choose to study, and essentially recommend a cap of what the state. And I'll grant you, private insurance, this doesn't dictate what private insurance does, but anything that falls under the state insurance, they could set a cap to particular medications.
The reason I ask you,
Yes, sir.
will the new executive order that was signed that put a cap on prescription drugs tie into that at all? Or,
I'll be honest with you, I'm not completely sure.
okay,
I'm not sure how the two of those, go inside. I'm not sure if the federal executive order trickles down to like state insurance. I'd have to look into that more to see.
okay.
But
Just curious.
thank you.
And Senator, I'm glad you said something about the reentry
Yeah.
bill. I try and stay with local gatekeepers here, and Councilwoman Bell and I went through a reentry simulation, and we saw the challenges that occur, and we're very glad that was passed.
Well, I appreciate it, and the intent here with that legislation is really about gathering information to hopefully set people up for success. Bill came and testified on this bill multiple years in the past. Bill Gardner, that is, with
yep.
gatekeepers. And so he understands the challenges, more so probably than anybody else, because he lives it every day, and we're all very appreciative of all the great work that he does in our community. But he'll be the first to tell you sometimes that he's overwhelmed with the amount of individuals that he sees that come into our community that don't have the proper support systems in place. Whether it's we have the supports within our community, or individuals that are just being integrated into our community that may not have originated from here, and so they don't have the family, the friend support system to begin with. There's a lot they don't have per se, and I'm sure he'd be better to articulate that than I am. But he has been a strong supporter of the legislation, has testified in person in the past, and has wrote letters of support. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah. Also, thank you for coming in. At the post legislation session a couple weeks ago, is hosted by the chamber, which is a paid event. So not everyone has the opportunity to hear from the delegation. So thank you for coming in and letting our citizens hear the goods and the bads, what happened. I would have a suggestion for the body and for you guys too as well, is before session begins, if we can come back to the table to discuss our strategic plans that we approved 2 months ago. But if we can come with some ideas based on that plan and see how the state can help, especially with, like one example, the homeless issue, affordable housing, blight, things like that. So it'd be more of like a working collaborative session before, obviously, the session begins. So I would propose that idea.
That'd be a good idea.
So,
I'm happy to make myself available anytime. Over the years, I've been doing this now, 8 going on 9 years. Different years have been different with the city. I've always made myself available. Anytime you guys want me in, just all you have to do is invite me. I'm more than happy to be there. I've been a part of strategic sections in the past. I think it was Mayor Keller at the time. One time I was with the Borough Box, I remember, when you guys came with your goals. Different years, I've come in, like we are here today, to give an update. Some years, whatever reason, we haven't been asked to. Happy to. To answer your question, we will make ourselves available, scheduling permitted, anytime we can, but I'm sure we can find a time that's amenable to everybody.
It'd be good for being accessible, whatever I need inside. Appreciate it.
Yes. And I'll just stress again, please, anything that you guys need from us, the sooner the better, because what I found coming in like a day before the session, it's very hard to like build up those like witnesses and to get, if you get things pre-filed, you get a low bill number, so your bills get heard earlier. You have a better chance with the end of it, it's a scramble to get everything in, and things that may have been passed just don't have time. So the earlier we can get your priorities in, the better chance they've got.
what would be ideal time frame? Like any particular month would be better?
I would say in a perfect world, to have your legislative agenda or priorities kind of formalized, I'd say by the end of October. In a perfect world, because if you want to pre-file something, that's usually in November, to the delegate's point. And I know when Delegate Grossman and I worked with the city on the tax sale bills 2 years ago, we sat around this table in the summer a couple different times working on those. So that way we were able to have everything in, everything was teed up, ready to go, as Delegate Schindler said. Because if you wait till December, January, at the end of the day, like he just said, it's a race against the clock. So the earlier you can get stuff in and have everything formulated and organized, the much better chance it gives you, because you have that time then to work on things as they go through the legislative process, things to be amended or things of that nature. So to answer your question, I would say best case scenario, perfect world, end of October. Worst case scenario, definitely by mid-December. So sometime within that ballpark.
Thank you. I know for me, it'll be helpful to understand out of our list if there's anything the state can do.
Sure.
Because I know we have that conversation many times, is like, can this be a state priority, or is this specifically a city issue or a county issue? So having that quote unquote work session together, we'll be able to have a better understanding what the state can do, so we can have that list ready to go by October.
Sure, absolutely.
Perfect. All right, anything else?
Again, I thank both of you for coming out.
Yep.
Sometimes uncomfortable conversations need to be done, and it was done today, and I respect that, so thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
anytime.
guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. I know I've been jumping around here a little bit, but I'm going to put you on off the back burner again for a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and have the Hagerstown Youth Council 2024-25 session update with Margie Joe and Rachel Paul, please.
I think they appreciated that.
You're happy about that, aren't you?
Yes, thank you. We have a little party afterwards. Yeah. So thank you guys so much for having us. The Hagerstown Youth Council is attending tonight's session to present an update on the 2024-2025 Hagerstown Youth Council session. I want to thank city staff, our partner group members, and the countless community organizations that helped us throughout the year. And I also want to shout out, of course, to the youth council members who make it all happen. It's my pleasure to introduce this year's chair, Xander Hine, and co-chair, Torin Malott, to give an update on behalf of the Hagerstown Youth Council.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Xander Hine, and I'm serve as the 2024-2025 Chair of the Hagerstown Youth Council.
And I'm Tor Malott, and I serve as the co-chair for this year as well. So this year, our council makeup and our demographic revolves around our 18 members. We have representation from varying schools in Washington County Public Schools and outside. from South Hagerstown High School, North Hagerstown High School. I'm from Barbara Ingram School for the Arts, St. Maria Goretti Catholic High School, and Boyd J. Michael III Technical High School. Our session began on September 23rd of last year. That was our first meeting. And overall, we've had a total of 18 meetings, and that was split between 4 different committees.
Oh, also, we have 5 great partner group members who are adults that oversee our like council work and just like what we do as a whole. They help plan events as well as just participate in the meetings. So for our year, we came in with some goals and objectives. And the 3 big ones were advancing impact, extending event planning, and maximizing productivity. So advancing impact, we want to increase youth participation all over the city in nonprofit organizations and through a variety of different volunteer opportunities. We want to work with these nonprofit organizations to get our youth more involved in civic engagement and volunteering and public service. We also want to provide a platform for youth-led voices to come to us and kind of voice their issues with our community so that we can bring those to the people that need to hear them. For extended event planning, we plan youth-focused events. Our largest one is Charge for Change, which started last year, but it's grown this year. We also planned Earth Day in accordance with the city and other nonprofit organizations. And what we want to do through these events is address and advocate youth issues, such as mental health, physical health, and other drug problems, things like that. And we want to provide opportunities for youth to showcase their strengths as well as like bring their own issues to light. And the final thing, which we're going to touch on, is maximizing productivity. So this year we did a 4-committee system. So the previous year we had kind of all worked as one big group, but this year we wanted to maximize productivity and split into 4 groups. We had 2 for our running programs that we have, and we had 2 for the events that I just mentioned. We'll talk about this.
So kind of just expanding on what Xander was briefly mentioning, we expanded and kind of reframed our committees this year. Last year, the council kind of focused on one event at a time, whereas this year we kind of broke it up and delegated that responsibility a little bit differently. This year we had Earth Day Event Planning Committee, which our secretary of that was Lewis. And then for our Charge for Change Event Planning Committee, we had Olivia for our secretary. Then we had for our new programs that we were launching for this year, included our newsletter/news intake program committee and our service engagement committee. And Naomi was our secretary for service engagement, and Aliana Orndorff was our newsletter program committee secretary.
We hope to have that newsletter out by the end of the month, so be on the lookout for that on our socials. But we've also had a variety of guest speakers throughout the year. Some notable ones, they're all on the screen or on your handouts, but some notable ones are the American Youth Association. So this is a nationwide association for civic engagement and legislation for youth. But we had some people from the local chapter come in and speak to us, as well as the Rotary Club, Washington Goes Purple, Washington County Public Schools, Washington County Association of Student Councils. We had the SMOB, which is student member of the Board of Education, and the president of that come and speak. We also had the Washington County Diversity and Inclusion Committee, as well as USMH.
This year, before us, actually, sitting at this very table, we had City of Hagerstown increase participation in municipal functions on a variety of commissions and meetings. We had the Planning Commission, we had public hearing meetings, Historic District Commission meetings, and Mayor and City Council regular session meetings. This year, we had members attend all of these. And we wanted to make sure that we were fully immersing ourselves in local leadership, such as you guys and other organizations. And you can see that pictured in your handouts and on our slideshow, just a few. Another thing that we did that was very different this year, and that was awesome for us to expand upon, was our Advocacy Day. Previously, we did not have an Advocacy Day, and this was our first field trip heading to Annapolis. We got to see how the legislative session functioned, and I'm pretty sure we got to actually sit in a Senate hearing as well, which was a really cool experience that we really can't even put into words how incredible it was to see that firsthand of how those legislative functions occur, and to be able to be part of that in that very room. And we had a great delegation from the Youth Council this year, especially for this being our first one. And we got to speak to a variety of different delegates and senators and different leadership in Annapolis.
Yeah, although I didn't ride with them, I also heard that there was a big party bus that our advisor Rachel got to drive around.
Rachel drove our
So-
big 12-passenger van, and she did a phenomenal job.
No accidents.
It had a backup camera and everything.
One thing that our Service Engagement Committee sort of planned for this year that was new was the Teen Job Fair. So we hadn't participated in this in the past at the Washington County Free Library, but it was sort of a new thing for us this year. So that committee designed all of our business cards, tablecloths, all that to set up for this event and for future events. But we wanted to kind of give the youth a different look in terms of like how they can serve in their community, not just for employment opportunities at this job fair, but also for ways to like get involved in public service and kind of involved in like governmental functions of our community. So we also had Earth Day on April 26th, I believe. So this is an event put on every year by us, Aqua, DNR, and the City of Hagerstown, and it recognizes Earth and Arbor Day. This was the City of Hagerstown's 40th year as a tree city. So I know a lot of you guys were actually in attendance for this event. And although it did get very rainy, it was good for the newly planted trees, so that was a plus. But we removed trash, obviously planted trees and mulched 90 trees, I think. And we cleaned up the stream and garden as well. And the trash collected from the garden and stream was donated to Washington Goes Purple as a part of their Trash Bash art fundraiser. And our lovely youth council members came out and volunteered with us as well as family members, friends, all of that. And then volunteers from Citibank and Boy Scout Pack 66 were there as well. And like the Earth Day, our other big event was Charge for Change. So obviously this event includes free food, fun times, fun run, and fantastic giveaways. So this was our second year of planning this event. Our registration increased by quite a bit. So this year total, we had 73 participants register. We had 70 runners in total. So this event focused on the importance of everyone, but especially focusing on youth mental well-being as well as physical well-being. Last year, we kind of focused on mental health and like drug abuse, but this year we kind of focused on just health in general with kind of like a more positive outlook. So this day we had fitness, we had the 3K run, obviously, and we also had vendors and guest speakers. We had former Mayor Takesha. Actually, this is on the next slide, so I'm not gonna steal Torrance thunder here, but we also had giveaways and music from Obispo student.
So what Xander kind of touched on just a little bit, we had a variety of community organizations, speakers, performers, and overall collaboration. That's what really brought this event together and made it so phenomenal. So some of our organizations to note was the Washington County Free Library, Washington County NAACP, Compassion for All, the Health Department of Washington County, Washington County's Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and the Rooted app. For our race timing, we collaborated with Racing Multisports. For giveaway donations, we had a variety from the Flying Boxcars tickets to AT&T gift cards, Warehouse Cinemas Family Box, Dairy Queen ice cream cakes, and Free Range Cafe gift card. For our performer, we had a local BISFA student who's a guitarist and vocalist, Ryan Franco. And then we had speakers, former Mayor Takesha Martinez, Terrence Gua, Chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and then City Councilwoman Caroline Anderson.
Also, an exclusive giveaway that we had was our very own
Yes.
Youth Council merch, one of one, or for everyone that's not on the Youth Council, but they got a sweatshirt as well. So that was part of the giveaway as well. Yeah, we can definitely get you guys.
Yeah. And for our volunteer opportunities, we also were participating in those throughout our session. Council members have participated in the following: for Folk Festival, Halloween Block Party, Photos with Grinch and Holly Fest, the Downtown Tree Lighting, Earth and Arbor Day in City Park, and the 2025 State of the City, where council members were able to have interviews with local community business owners.
So this year, there's also a large focus on outreach and engagement and growing our social media presence. So the Hagerstown Youth Council has accumulated a following of 950 followers on Facebook and over 600 followers on Instagram. So obviously, we know that Instagram is the more youth-oriented social media platform in terms of people our age. So we're trying to grow that even more. But we've had a lot of social media impressions since the start of this session. We've had over 40,000 views and 1,400 contact interactions on Facebook and over 25,000 views and 924 contact interactions on Instagram. We try to increase engagement through countdown reminders and things for our events so we could get volunteers and just participants in general. So that's another thing that we're going to continue to do in the years in the future.
So overall, we achieved new heights and continue to do so. So year after year, the council continues to flourish in new ways, whether that be our advocacy day or increased participation in our events. We continue to see an increase in our impact and our success. And when we expand our reach, when we expand our impact, we also expand our success. And that's kind of something that we just wanted to push forth in how we are continuing to grow and expand. We had an increase in applications for this session. We had an increase in numbers, participation, and more participation in our events. So overall, we just continued to grow and expand and do even better than the year before.
So on behalf of the entire Youth Council, we want to thank you guys for your time and for just supporting us and backing us in everything that we do in all of our events, showing up to our events and being speakers and just inspiring the youth in the community. That's what we really want to thank you guys for.
And as a whole, as I previously did say, but the Youth Council continues to grow and flourish at a rapid rate. And we thank you guys for supporting us, and with your assistance, we will only continue to get stronger. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you. Well, wow, don't leave.
No.
Because we're going to give you all the accolades, all the praises at this table. Very impressive year to all of you, to the adult members, thank you, to the parents, thank you for your guidance. I mean, you guys are a wonderful group of kids, and it shows because you have adults in your life and mentors that just pour into you. And I follow some of you guys on my personal page, so I see the work that you're doing outside of council, and I'm so proud of you guys. And I'm glad that, when we added a goal for the youth council to be more involved in the city government side of things, y'all didn't hesitate. Y'all jumped right on in and right at the table. And some of the most boring meetings, to be honest, but you looked engaged. I appreciate that, especially you back there. But overall, just great work. And in the future, I would love to see more members added to this program. It's nice to see you guys outside, the events. I was at we had a DEI committee meeting last night, and Terrence and others praised the youth council for your work, and obviously it was at the Charge for Change. So it's just nice hearing other entities say how great you guys are, and I just want to make sure you get your flowers at this table.
Thank you.
I just want to say, I think the progression speaks to what you guys do. Like adding on to the committees, the growing numbers and your impressions with the social media, you guys taking charge, like Councilmember Burnett mentioned, and being a part of Advocacy Day, all of that speaks the volumes to what you do. Now, I will say, I have never seen a youth council outside of Hagerstown, so you guys are doing a phenomenal job. I think Baltimore City might have a youth council, but I mean, we are like hours away from each other. I would love to see more members added. I'm not sure if we have like a cap or if you need an approval, but if you needed an approval, I think we've got all yeses. Yeah, so keep up what you guys are doing. You guys are phenomenal. And yeah, we would love to see what happens with you guys next year.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have any questions?
No, but I do want to say, I love what you guys are doing as well. Just seeing the progression from last year to this year is amazing. I would even think it'd be nice that each council meeting, we see one of you guys maybe have a seat at the table, even if it's rotating youth council. I think that's a good idea, especially with y'all going to other sessions in Annapolis. It might be good to know a lot more about your local government. It's an idea.
Yeah, let's pick some fun ones. Not that the budget's not fun, Michelle. Some fun ones.
Please, I'm leaving to go to the after party.
Right. Where is the after party? Where is the after party? The after party?
I think the thing that I like most about your presentation is probably the thing that gets lost on seats at this table, you know, when you get to that point in life, is that you all clearly engage in this process in an organic way that we often at tables like this can't, because things for us like budgets and infrastructure and all that sort of already sort of aligned and structured on how we're supposed to engage and deal with it, economic development, et cetera. You guys have that flexibility to sort of pick and choose those interest areas that you have and not be constricted by the boundaries of what there are in, you know, more stuffy formal settings like this. So I would just encourage you to keep doing that, to pick the things that you like. And I say that, you know, my job, I have 2 interns that I hire each year, and I tell them all the time, because I work for local government, I manage a small town, and I say, listen, at any point during the summer, I'm giving you something you don't like to do, please tell me. Because I want you to be like interested in the things that you're doing. So I think that comes out in this presentation, that you guys, you know, took the things that you're interested in and acted that.
Yeah, I'm glad to see y'all involved in doing things, because I would like to see a lot more people be more involved in the community. So we need more of that. So, you know, that's what I did. I got involved. I did internships on Capitol Hill. You know, I was the first in my family that even got an internship on Capitol Hill, and I got to meet Senator Obama and Senator Clinton and Senator McCain. So it's good to see folks being involved in their community and doing stuff here. So I'm glad you guys are doing it. Thank you.
Quick question though, just in case we have any youth watching, how do they go about applying? Like, how does that work?
Our application will launch very shortly, towards like the end of May, early June, and we promote that throughout all of our social media. So if you fill out that application, there are certain requirements, like you either have to go to school or live in the city of Hagerstown, and you can't be like a full-grown adult to join the youth council. But yeah, just our application, and then you'll have an interview with Rachel.
Thank you.
Whenever you start something new like this, you're always worried about which way it'll go, and you guys have really stepped up to the plate and grew this thing, and Rachel's done a great job, you know, with the direction, and to see you guys engaged in all this community, in the community, is just wonderful to see, and we want to thank you.
Thank you.
And they're confident.
And one more thing, Alan Anderson, you're not here, but thank you. Thank you.
And he's breaking records right now.
For the record, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, now that we're over time, Michelle, you only get 5 minutes on the FY '26 budget review.
I'll let Brooke do all the talking.
You're up.
Okay, so, good afternoon, everyone. I know this is their favorite part of the night, despite what Councilmember Burnett did to her just moments ago.
It's so much fun.
I think what we'll do is just take a quick minute. I know we don't have that on our memo, but is there any follow-up? Is there anything else we need to touch upon from the general fund before we move forward? Because the goal is to move forward and hit some other funds, additional conversations. However, I feel like today there was a lot more questions, and we really want to be as open and as transparent as possible. We want to assist if there's any remaining questions, and we want to make sure that we get to the place we need to be so that next week you're ready to adopt it. You're like, Michelle, I love this book so much. We have no questions and we're good to go. I love this book.
Oh, they're coming. Trust me.
So are we moving forward with other funds? Or are we?
We can. Everybody has a question?
Okay.
Everybody good on general fund?
Yeah. All right then.
Okay.
We'll go.
I just have one thing. So, I attempted, because I know that we left last meeting with some continued conversation on, what do we do about, the proposal within the budget for the tax rate adjustment, and sort of what that means and where you can possibly find or consider things within the general fund. And so I tried to put into a sheet sort of what each section means to the budget. And before we move on, I just want to touch on it briefly. So it's real simple. Based on the figures, we're going to see about a $6 million adjustment. Where does that money generate from? And so, as I said, the state assessment increase, we're going to see about a $2.1 million jump. The development growth increase, about a $2 million jump. And so the real whole, if you will, is about $2.2 million in total. What does that mean to the average homeowner that owns an average home that's assessed at about $200,000? And I looked at all of the homes sort of on the market in the city, various parts of the city, and that's a pretty average range to be at. It means about $110 more to your tax bill. And so then I extrapolated the changes between FY25 budget and FY26 budget. And you can see that what the monetary change means to each of those departments. And then the impact to the taxpayer. So very simply put, if you look at legal counsel, what does that mean for the $110 that you're going to spend more in taxes next year? About $1.35 of that is going to go towards your legal expenses. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that is part of the lobbyist
Yes.
process. So I just sort of put a note outside of that of what that means. And I'm just going to tell you, the ones in red were in my mind as a single council member, the areas where I've looked at it, and I've looked at it twice and three times. And, if you look at the mayor of the councils, it's pretty set. There isn't a lot you could take from that. In fact, a lot of the ones in red are actually going down. And so the ones in green are really the ones where you look at it and say, those are big dollar figures or big percentage increases. And I know we've talked a lot about police and fire, but if you go down to public safety, about $59.72 of that $110 is going toward police costs. And so, those are the things you're getting for that, adjustment. And the same on the second page is that, those are your different departments. Those are where your funding is going. And so the areas in green, to me, in my mind, as I looked at it, were really the areas where if you really wanted to make reductions in that $110, there's where you would look. And you would look within the specific lines, within those specific areas. And those are the numbers you could come up with if you reviewed it to get it back to zero. So this just gives you a sort of plug and play process to say, okay, is this something that I have an interest in? As I said last week, I'll consider anything that anybody puts forward. And then the ones in yellow are just the ones that are self-supporting funds. So it's money in, money out, meaning it really doesn't affect that number at the end of the day. So,
You did a really good job with breakdown.
so you are welcome to take that with you. I know we'll probably have another conversation next week.
Bye.
And, it just gives you an idea of where your dollars and cents are going. And I can tell you, you know, as a homeowner, as a taxpayer, as a city resident, you know, if you tell me that $70 or so of that 110 is going toward, you know, additional public safety, then I would say that, yeah, that's the message that we heard. You know, that's the bulk of that. You know, really anything else is going to be minor. Or going to be things that you're going to have to go back, frankly, to the drawing board with the employee base, because, you know, we do have contracts and obligations and things like that. You know, there are material costs in every one of those budgets, like parts. You know, it isn't as if the stuff you're buying costs less this year than it did last year. So, you know, there's just numbers that you can't move.
I appreciate that too, Kristen, or Councilman Alshire, because as you saw, we had an email today about where this money is going, and this exactly breaks it out so we can show the public exactly where it is. And the other thing is that, I don't want to steal your thunder, but
Still away.
we just gotta make sure that the public knows that this increase is not 5.5%. It's 5.5 cents. So we just want to make sure that everybody knows, because that's you know, of course, you see a lot of things on Facebook, and it starts generating, and all of a sudden, you know, a lot of people think it's 5.5%. and
Yeah, I
it's
had to
not.
tell somebody that wasn't the case, so.
Right, so 5.5 cents, a nickel and a half of a penny is way different than 5% increase. So it is very important that we are hearing that. And I will be brutally honest, Councilmember Alshire, you can look in section 2, right? In the very beginning, the first couple pages.
Section 2,
That's
page
where
1.
these breakdowns are. It's one of the charts and areas that we looked at in the beginning. And full disclosure, he hand keyed all this himself. Like if he had asked, we would have given him the Excel spreadsheet from our budget book to do this, so that he keeps taking the time and the effort to come back and revisit and help craft the message in a different manner, right? It is very important to hear. So if you're wanting to see, again, each of the areas, and for the areas that screen, full disclosure, finance and accounting is one of them. And you can see that there's an increase. And I will tell you, when you look at my department in the general fund section, and you look at the component that is salaries and wages versus all else, if finance and accounting is the area in which you wish to adjust, I'm decreasing and letting staff go. Because that's really all the more that I have to do, aside from audit, which is contractual in nature and we're required to do a third party, right?
Yeah, any area you see in here that's green that says personnel costs, that means you're going to impact personnel within those specific departments.
Yeah, it's really good.
So again, the 5.5 cents tax increase generates in total between real estate taxes and corporate personal property taxes, 2.2 million. I don't want people to keep thinking the 2.2 is all coming from residential homeowners or commercial buildings. It's not. It's also coming from corporate personal property tax. And one of the things that is mentioned so clearly on here about the average, assessed value, I appreciate that you double checked us. We had a chart that we covered in the very beginning where we had the dollar impact and what that looked like, and did it for different assessed values of homes, and we kind of highlighted and shaded, if you remember back to April, the $200,000 one, because according to the information that we had at the time, that was about the median income right now for assessed value for. So if we are ready to move forward, we'll move forward and we'll talk about some other governmental funds. So again, not an enterprise fund, not funds that charge for services that has to be self-supporting, but other governmental funds, much like the general fund, smaller in nature. However, these funds are not funded primarily with taxpayer dollars. And first up is we'll go to Special Revenue Fund Section 4. So again, that is Section 4. And for those of you, if you can see the screen, You can either look in your budget book or check the screen. I will tell you the screen is pretty microscopic. But we're going to talk about CDBG. Again, CDBG is acronym for Community Development Block Grant Fund. Talked about it several times this evening. The first couple pages that you're seeing is just narrative and descriptive in nature. We flip the page to page 4 and page 5. I think one of the things that's important before we start to look at the main chart that I want to focus on for CDBG is on page 4 at the very top. There you're going to see the different amounts that we get, the entitlements. So the entitlements is simply the amount of grants or HUD federal funding that we receive in any single year. It's important to note that because as you see the dollar amounts in that chart and we move forward with looking at the budget, sometimes they're not a one-for-one, meaning I might have the B24, which is federal terminology, but B24 simply means fiscal year 25 for the city of Hagerstown, our current year budget. The award is $831,982. That's what we were given. So again, page 4, section 4, the very top. Now, when we look at fiscal year 25 budget, you may say, Michelle, we don't see that number as the number being spent. Correct. So the amount that we receive in an annual award might not correlate and be the total spent that you see in any given year, because this funding can be used for multiple things, and sometimes everything doesn't get received and spent dollar for dollar all within the same year. But again, it's important to note, one of the things we want to take the opportunity to stop and mention is, right now, we were hopeful in fiscal year 26, which is notated by B25 entitlement grant, that we would continue to receive about the same amount of funding, or $800,000. We are not quite in the middle of May, but we're hitting close to that. And so it's a little late, but we have not yet received word on what that funding looks like. So still, we may be coming back and tweaking. I know that Margie and staff were here a couple of weeks ago and talked about the public services side and things that they wanted to do. Again, that may or may not change based on the amount of federal award that we get. And then if we go to page 5, it's a very summarized level. You'll see on here, fiscal at the top, you'll see revenues, and at the bottom half, you'll see expenditures. And again, those revenues are going to show line after line, column after column, whether it was fiscal year 24 actual, which again is a reminder because it's been a bit, is audit. Clear to the right, the final column is fiscal year 26 proposed budget. What we're looking to spend, we offset with revenues, right? So when you see that 1.3 million in fiscal year 26 proposed budget, just remember, yes, I did not say we were getting new grant money of that amount, but I said, this is what we're going to spend, and it may be additional years, more than just one, okay? So as you come down, you will clearly see that the majority of all the funds that we have in the revenue section is absolutely that entitlement dollars, and that is the amount that we receive from HUD. In addition to that, we have been able to utilize this funding in the past to make loans. So when we make a loan and there is a repayment and somebody pays us back principal and interest, we keep that funding. And then we have to reduce and utilize that funding first before we can ask for new entitlement dollar reimbursements, right? So if we do a loan and we're receiving dollars back before we can ask for any draws against a new dollar amount, even though we've had expenditures, we can't start using that until we've used up all of our other funding that they've allowed us to keep. So you'll see the principal repayments, you'll see the other interest. And then at the bottom, you're going to see categories. We're going to flip the page because it's important with CDBG, I think, instead of looking at the higher level categories, to help break it down a little bit. So we're going to page 6 is focused on revenue. So kind of like we did in the general fund sections, we focus on revenue. Page 7 is where I'm going to bring your attention next. That's where we start looking at all those categories and breaking it down a little bit more in detail. So you're going to see things like, I'm halfway through the page, you're going to see public services. All right, fiscal year 26, you see a number, just one summary number that says 130,000. Again, that number is based on a cap. In CDBG, there is a 15% cap that must be adhered to, meaning you look at your current year entitlement dollars from HUD, and you also look at what you received in your prior year from other income sources. You add those together, what you give away in public services to other agencies in this funding cannot exceed 15% of that total. So when we looked at the math and what we estimated for the new entitlement, we can give 130,000 to agencies. And again, bringing us back to a couple of weeks ago when Margie and group sat at the table, walk through some of those agencies where we were hoping to expand the number of agencies to give dollars to. Maybe each one received a little bit less than what they did in the past. But if we get word later this week, later next week, and we do not receive 800,000 in new funding, this dollar amount will go down as a result of that. So when you say, Michelle, give us an example of some public service agencies we funded in the past, you'll start to see, the first line, it says REACH. You start coming down through there, Community Free Clinic, Girls Inc. Supper Program, Children in Need, Senior Living Alternative Meals, Holly, Commission on Aging, Goodwill, Sanmar, Hagerstown Area Religious Council, again, REACH, R.W. Johnson Community Center, America's Hauling for Hope, and You Hold the Key. Not that those are the only names of the agencies that have ever received CDBG funding from the city. It's just the ones that have received or is estimated to receive fiscal year 24 plus in the current fiscal year 25. Underneath public services, right, we're going to see this other breakout of housing rehab. And one of the things to bring our attention to there, if I can find some of it. Almost at the bottom, you'll see Code Admin PT Inspector. You say, Michelle, what is that? So in the general fund, within our neighborhood services group, we have an inspector that is a part-time position that is funded in partial by $35,000 from CDBG funds. I will tell you that right now that position is currently vacant. But this inspector is focused more on very specific things, very specific areas, and helps to do other more focused, if you would, activity. There's other items in here like the home ownership program. The very top line, I guess I should have stopped at, is something that we talked about tonight. Residential single-family emergency repair. So you'll see for fiscal year 26, 125,000 out of the total category for all of housing rehab at 295. Again, some of these things, I don't want to focus so much on the specific dollars that we have allocated to the specific lines, knowing that they may change, but I want you to feel comfortable about where you can find this information if there's ever questions, okay? We're going to flip the page. We're going to end CDBG with page 8. And here we're going to look at the administration. And again, next to it, you may or may not have noticed when we stopped and talked about public services, there's an asterisk. At the very bottom, we give you, in case you forget throughout the year, Michelle said there's a cap on something, but it's some percentage, I don't remember what it is. So we notate it and we put it in the book. To be brutally honest, oftentimes, I don't remember what they are until I go back to the book, right? I need a refresher because I don't touch it every day. But the administration is our staff and the things that we pay for our staff, right? So we carve it out unique and special. And HUD puts a maximum cap on that. We can spend no more than 20%. So it looks at current year entitlement and current year other income. Adds those together, and we can spend no more than 20% of that amount here. So again, if something happens and our current year entitlement is less than 800,000, we are going to have to make adjustments. And you're going to say, Michelle, what are you going to do there? Likely what will happen is more of the staffing cost will have to be absorbed by the general fund to make up this difference. Unless we said, we don't want the staff anymore for CDBG, right? And again, we're all these things, we're just waiting to hear what the final entitlement is. Margie and group will be back, then to finalize and do the annual action plan. Another component that comes back, as well as present a consolidated plan, which is a plan that they do every 5 years. So those are things to come in the next month or so, maybe June or July, hopefully sooner. Again, that is CDBG in a nutshell. Any questions there before we turn a look at one more? Next, we're going to look at economic redevelopment. I'm going to let Brooke speak a little bit. Okay. Economic redevelopment, and you're going to say, Michelle, we got in the general fund, we saw in Councilmember Alshire's sheet and what you have in the budget book, you have economic development. Not to be confused with Jill's core economic development team that is staffed and the majority of the expenses are kept under the general fund. Economic redevelopment fund is a separate fund where we do the majority of all of our incentives. It also is a fund that can be set aside that can make a purchase, and we have in the past, make a purchase of a property to renovate it, and even if we have to, sell it at a loss, just to get it back in the hands of private to hopefully do improvements. It is not regulated by HUD or CDBG. This is mostly local funds that go here. So Brooke?
Okay. So Economic Redevelopment Fund's main purpose is to promote the revitalization of the city's downtown and older neighborhood areas. So on page 10, at the top, as Michelle mentioned earlier, it can purchase properties, but as of 2023, no properties have been held in this fund. This fund houses the Invest Hagerstown program, which for FY26, $1,080,000 is budgeted. That's broken down into 5 grant programs, I'm sorry. The City Center Redevelopment Grant Program, there's 500 budgeted there. Citywide Redevelopment Grant Program, 210,000. Home ownership, 195,000. Rental property rehabilitation, 100,000. And then commercial sign and facade is 75,000. And you can see that down at the chart on the bottom to the far right, and also history.
And that $1,080,000 comes directly as a transfer from the general fund. So if you say, Michelle, we wish to reduce taxes, I think one of the things that Councilmember Alshire's talked about in 2 prior meetings is you look at Invest Hagerstown, here's $1,080,000. But if you reduce here and don't want to put the money and set it aside for incentives, you can leave it within the general fund to reduce overall property. Doesn't help the situation. It doesn't help us in preparation for next year.
Okay, so then on page 12, this is the fund as a whole. So we'll just kind of quickly go through the revenues and expenditures. Revenues are $136,000. This is under the FY26 proposed column. $100,000 of that is community legacy grant funding, which is half of the Bring Vacant Storefront Up to Shell Condition grant, which is a total of $200,000. The first $100,000 should be spent in '25, and then $36,000 in investments.
And so the one that we previously talked about this evening, the new emergency repair program, we did not know at the time that we did the budget that we were going to receive that, and therefore it's not included in the revenue. But you can see we've got state monies listed in a couple of places here, fiscal year '25. What will happen is, as they come forward with that program, you add the revenue, but you also add the expense, because we're not maintaining or keeping it. Literally, we're getting a grant to give away as a grant and incentive program.
Next expenditures are at $1,616,000. Here you can see towards the bottom, the Invest Hagerstown funding. And then at the top, there are things like $400,000 for PEP subsidized rent payments and other economic incentives. That $100,000 is just coming from the revenue above. It's in and out. And then under total other financing sources, $1.34 million. There you'll see the transfer from the general fund for the Invest Hagerstown plus another $260,000.
Right, so all the funding again in this, right? At the top, we have some that we're getting from, grants and interest, 136,000, but the majority of the others, of the revenue is coming from other financing sources of 1.3 million, and that's coming from the general fund. So that is an actual expense in the general fund under transfers out, not in an individual department or cost center.
So that brings that to a decrease in the fund balance of about 140,000.
Is there any questions on Economic Redevelopment Fund? And so I'm going to give you got options. I know that it's 6:30. I know we have a 7 o'clock meeting. We're scheduled to have a break. We can certainly do a break, and then next week, what we can do is come back. We would cover parking fund, electric fund, water fund, wastewater fund. Or do you want me to cover other funds, some of the additional funds this evening? If we do, you might not have as much of a break.
I would propose the first option and come back next week.
It's a lot of numbers to throw in at the end of the night, so. Any other questions before? So is everybody good? If we do that next week, we'll just do parking next week. We won't, stormwater and golf, really, there's not a whole lot, right? The golf fund is just the golf course, what they're charging for the services, the transfer from the general fund, and the stormwater fund, it's basically set. I mean, we've set in place rates that are going to go into place. It's going to change in July 1, and then the rates stay the same for the next 3 years. Okay. Sounds great.
All right, thank you, Helen Broke. All right, before I let you go on break, one last thing. There's a request of a letter for support that I want to get you guys' approval on. Requester is our own council member, Caroline Anderson. It's request to increase funding for the chronic disease education and awareness program for FY 2026. Everybody has the sheet there. I just need everybody's approval for signature on that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right, we're adjourned for break until 7 o'clock.